All right, so look this way, Brian. We live.
We are live.
All right, we're live. It's Buff Time, baby. It's Buff Time with Brian and Big Dog right here on both of our channels, broadcast live, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Find us on it, and we're gonna go like that, man. We're gonna introduce ourselves. My name is Big Dog Chico. I'm gonna be, I guess, representing the Prime side. You know, a longtime Prime fan, following him over from Jackson State, of course, during his whole football career, but his coaching career, Jackson State, and now over. Um, to Colorado, University of Colorado, and doing this thing in his second season there. And we're collaborating with my guy Brian now. Brian, let us know and let everybody out there listening know what you do in your background.
Yeah, so Brian Howell, I've been covering the Buffs for this will be my 15th season covering them for the Boulder Daily Camera, which is the local newspaper in Boulder. Our website for Buffs coverage is buffzone.com. And so you mentioned you're sort of coming from the Prime side. I'm coming from the mainstream journalist side, I guess. And I guess I would represent you. And I were talking beforehand about there's since day one, there's sort of been there's Prime fans and there's CU fans, I guess. And I think that divide is maybe closing a little bit, over time. Yeah. But I think that you and I are kind of joking that you sort of represent those Prime fans. I represent maybe those CU fans that have been with it for a long time. But our point here is kind of like, let's prove that we can come together, we can just chat and have a good conversation, and maybe help the two different sides get the point of view of the other side, to where because the bottom line is, I used to say this all the time last year, when you'd see like the two sides maybe bicker at each other, it's like people got to understand everybody wants the same thing, and that's for the Buffaloes to be successful, because that means Coach Prime's successful, Shedor's successful, Shiloh, Travis, all those guys are successful, and that's what everybody wants. And so we just kind of come at it from different points of view because we've got different points of view, right? Me covering this program for a long time, maybe the Prime fans have not known about Colorado until about 15 months ago, and so, maybe educating each other on both those sides. So it's kind of fun to collaborate with you. I've collaborated with Neely a little bit. And so it'll be fun to, collaborate with you as well.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate you doing it, taking time out to do that. I know you're busy, man, covering it and mainstreaming it. Football and women's sports also. And we're going to go get into some other things that a lot of people out there probably know about. Well, we know, is it Brian this guy or is it Big Dog this guy? Yeah, we are. We're going to talk about different things. But main thing is, like we say, we're looking for the success of the Colorado Buffaloes and Coach Prime at the end of the day. And right now they're in spring practice. I think we have 9 more practices to go, including the spring game. Starting tomorrow, which would be Tuesday, they're going to be picking up, I think, practice number 7, whatever practice number it is.
Yeah, tomorrow's number 7.
Number 7, yeah. They're going to be picking this up tomorrow. And we've seen up to this point, a lot of guys standing out. And a lot of people talked about Micah Welch making plays, the freshman running back there. Of course, Shedor Sanders looking on point. Shiloh Sanders still hitting everything that moves, making tackles. Wide receivers stepping up. Marion Miller, defensive line looking like they have a whole new fire up under them, and the offensive line gelling together, protecting Shedor Sanders. Who are some guys we should be talking about and who have stood out to you thus far?
Yeah, I think number one you mentioned is Micah Welch. He's sort of been the talk a little bit so far of spring ball, and we don't get to watch it, and so all of us Buff fans are kind of watching spring ball the same way. And we got Bucky and Darius to thank, and Neely as well through their videos. We're kind of all watching it through Well Off and Reach the People, things like that. But clearly, Micah Welch is turning some heads, and he's a guy that I know their high school recruiting class is small, but I think he was the lowest rated recruit until they've had a couple corners the last couple of weeks that are sort of off the radar a little bit. But Micah was that lowest rated guy, but he was maybe my favorite member of the class because I've always been a running back guy since I was a kid. Tony Dorsett, George Rogers, guys like that. I loved running backs, and Micah Welch was a guy. When I watched this film, I was like, ooh, okay, this kid's pretty good. And you get him in the spring ball, and actually met him last week at Xavier Weaver's pro day. Got a chance to say hi to him and shake his hand, and he's a shorter guy, but he is a rock, and you see that the way he's running the ball. And there was that play the other day where he kind of bowled over Shiloh Sanders and kind of backpedaled in the end zone while pointing at Shiloh, and it's one of those plays that Shiloh won't forget that one, but fans would love to see. And Shiloh would love to see that type of thing in the fall on Saturdays because, I think Micah Welch is going to be a key player on this team.
Wow. And 5'9", 205 pounds.
Yeah.
Baldwin, Georgia, down there where they play a lot of good football at. They say he's special. He's been special for a long time. Low to the ground running, like Coach Prime said he loves out of the backfield in that mode of kind of like Emmitt Smith, who he won a Super Bowl with. So, and then Coach Flea was heading up, one of the guys recruiting him. So brought him in. I know he's an electrified runner. I know he demands to have the football. But we got 3 upperclassmen studs in front of him now. Will he be able to, break that playing field, get in, break that depth chart of those 3 to get on the field to play, or would it be better for the team in Colorado and the staff to have a guy like that redshirt a year? Maybe play 3-4 games, but ultimately redshirt because you feel like he's so good and you don't want to just lose a year because you have 3 guys in front of him. So what would he get at the max? What, maybe 20 carries on the season?
Yeah. It's interesting to see how that's going to work out because there was so much talk about how good the running back group was last year, and then that running game just never got untracked. And Alton McCaskill was the guy that they brought in a year ago to be the guy, and he just was never healthy. We all saw, and there was that kind of famous clip on Well Off where Dion pulls him aside, Coach Prime pulls him aside on practice and says, "Look, man, I'm waiting to see the movie, not the commercial here." And
not the commercial, not the trailer.
Yeah. Well, the movie's been in production for about a year now, and maybe a year longer than Alton has wanted. And so he's a guy that we're all looking at and saying, okay, that's the guy. And then, Savion Wilkerson, I love his game as well. And he was 1,000-yard back at Jackson State 2 years ago. I thought they should have run him more last year. I really liked how he ran when he got chances. And then, of course, there's Dylan Edwards, who, was a fantastic freshman last year, but I think he's better. He's going to be better than he was last year, but he's still, to me, that kind of third down. Not that he can only do third down, but he's that prototype third down guy where you get him out of the backfield a little bit, throw him some passes. We saw him catch a pass out of the backfield, a deep pass from Shedeur the other day that was really nice. That's the type of thing I see from him, and maybe that change of pace back. But I think Welch can get in there. We never saw one guy take hold of it last year under Coach Flea. But 2 years ago, Savion did. And so it's hard to know what does Coach Flea really want to do. But to me, if Micah Welch keeps making plays like that, you play him. If he's the best or if he's one of the 2 best guys running the football, forget the red shirt. You got to play him and run the football.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough call for Coach Flea and Coach Prime and Coach Pat Shermer, who we saw in the video produced today, that he wants to have that running game established because that's going to showcase Shedeur Sanders even more. If you can have a running game going that the team has to respect, Shedeur can really get off now. And he has the wide receivers to do it. So, the running game is going to be key this year. Pat Shermer, who had, even on the video, showed that he had Saquon Barkley as a rookie. He coached Michael Vick, Donovan McNabb, Case Keenum when they went 13-3 in Minnesota. Also Sam Bradford in St. Louis. So he's had some guys, but also had to go through that transition phase with Eli Manning and Daniel Jones and no quarterback in Cleveland. So he's had the rough times, but he feels young and rejuvenated here there in Colorado. So if he can, establish that run game, no matter who it is, but it has to get going one way or the other. I think for starters, though, I think first game of the season, I think we'll see Dylan Edwards out there with the first group. Although I've been saying Alton McCaskill this whole time, I just think from the way that the mindset of the offense will be, I think Dylan will be first. Alton would be that guy. Would be like clock killing Corey Dillon back in the day. Remember Corey Dillon?
Oh yeah, yeah.
When they give him the ball late in the game, give it to Savion and Alto, but then Michael Welch is in that same mold too. So if either one of those guys have injury problems, Michael Welch is there, and if he mess around to get it, he might not let it go. So
well,
that's something.
And running back's an interesting spot too, because we talk about starters, and technically, if you play the first play, you're the starter, right? And I agree with
But
I agree with you there that Dylan Edwards, that first play, I think you probably come out with Dylan Edwards because he's that weapon that everybody remembers from TCU last year, and you remember the electric plays he made at Utah even, and so he's a scarier guy right off the bat. And so, but I would bet like that first game, Dylan Edwards is the quote starter, but Alton has the most carries that day. That's what I would guess.
I like that. I like that right there. But I would see Dylan is so dynamic that you can have him in the backfield with Shedeur, see what the defense is doing, and then send him out there in the slot now. Now you got an empty backfield with Dylan Edwards in the slot, and now the defense has to kind of show their hand now. Is it man? Is it zone still? Shedeur Sanders now have a clear picture. It helps the offensive line now because they can clearly see who's the blitzer and get rid of the ball faster. So I think, bringing that element to the offense will be something that I think we haven't seen before, but also the pistol formation with the running back directly behind Shedeur is going to scare some teams too. So,
and I would love to see some formations where you've got maybe Dylan and Alton in the backfield together, and and then all of a sudden, right before the snap, Dylan, maybe splits out, or maybe they start from there. They both stay in the backfield, start from there, and Dylan just goes out for a pass, something like that, or whatever it is. But I'd love to see stuff where those two guys, or whether it's Dylan and Welch or Dylan and Savion, whatever. I'd love to see more two back sets, because I think that I think all four of those guys are very different from each other, and that's why I like to see two backs, because there's two different threats every time you've got those guys back there. So that's what I'd love to see is, I think Dylan paired with any of those guys, he's so unique that I think him paired with anybody, it just adds that different threat that that the defenses have to think. So I'm curious to see what they do with that.
I think you hit it on the head though, with the two back sets and the tight end out there, and now the defense kind of comes out there, 7 in the box or something, and all of a sudden Dylan goes, well, you run it a couple times, you get some yardage, and all of a sudden now Dylan goes out there, he's out and lining up in the slot, and now you have the linebacker go out there trying to cover him. That's not going to work. One-on-one situation with Dylan. So, matchup situations, waiting to happen. We got so many running backs. I think we got to use them. Wide receivers looking very deep. Jimmy Horn Jr. and DeJounte Wester on the field at the same time, I think is going to be a problem for the defense. Both of those guys are kind of built in the same mold, super fast. Wester is just an exceptional route runner, over 100 catches last year. Then you have a guy like Shepard, who's going to try to do what Xavier Weaver did last year and come in May and establish himself as the number one guy after putting up successful seasons statistically at Vanderbilt in the SEC. So he's played against some high competition. So who are you looking to play a lot at wide receiver? Shout out to Amarion Miller and Cordell Russell coming in, and Terrell Timmons. You got some guys out there, man. Who do you like?
Yeah, and we didn't even mention the best one on the team, which is Travis Hunter, right? So
crazy, right?
I mean, how insane is that group that your best receiver is your cornerback? But it's a crazy group, and you mentioned Jimmy Horn and LaJohntay Wester on the field at the same time, and then you throw Dylan in the backfield. I mean, the speed is insane. And Travis, I don't think has that same speed, but his athleticism makes it look the same, and so Travis is in a whole other category. So you're asking about receivers, and Travis is one of those, but he's that other category. So we're going to say Travis that's the guy, right? That's the number one guy. But of those other guys, to me, the step that Jimmy Horn has to take is he had some drop problems last year, as good as he was. And, I think every receiving core kind of has that drop guy, the guy that struggles with that a little bit. And Jimmy was sort of that last year. He made a lot of big plays, but he would have some drops. And there was that, remember from the documentary, Prime was talking about there was a game that Jimmy was dropping the ball and he had to kind of put his arm around him and say, "You're fine. You can make plays." And then he goes out there and catches a pass. I think it was the CSU game.
That was
and then he catches the pass.
Big time.
And so then he catches the pass and ties the game. So, but I think that's the next step for him. But to me, when I saw Jimmy the other day, chatted with him again at Xavier's Pro Day, Jimmy looks bigger to me. He looks a little bit more muscular, still has that speed. But I look at him as all these guys coming in, I know some people have looked at it and said, "Oh, they're going to surpass Jimmy." I think it's going to spark Jimmy to where Jimmy's going to be, I think he can have a Xavier Weaver type of year that Xavier had last year where, he threatened 1,000 yards. I think Jimmy can do that. I still think outside of Travis, Jimmy's your next guy.
Yeah, definitely. Jimmy Horn Jr. I think the only reason you see a lot of those drops is because, for one, he gets targeted a lot, So you're going to have some drops, and nobody's perfect, but, just like saying Shiloh misses tackles. Well, he makes a lot of tackles too, at the same time. So I like to put it in this analogy. They still say Dikembe Mutombo was a great shot blocker, right?
Yep.
But he did get dunked on, right? It happens. You're going to get dunked on if you're trying to block shots or you're trying to block. So it happens. And so, Jimmy's going to, or any wide receiver's going to have some drops. He had a little string where he dropped a few of them, and Prime, like you said, had to talk to him. But that happens with wide receivers sometimes. We just hope that, it's more times than not that it doesn't happen. So
and I didn't mean to portray like that he drops half his passes or anything like that. It was maybe 6 or 7 drops throughout the year, but I think he caught like 58 passes. So he's catching
he was
more.
The team too.
So he's catching more, way more than he's dropping. But I'm just saying that you'll have those guys. Like I don't think Xavier had that many, or Travis had that many, and so it's not a ton of drops, but it's just every time when they happen, they can be huge. And I think that's one where Jimmy's got to maybe be a little more. I don't even want to use reliable because he was pretty reliable, but you know what I mean. That eliminate if it was 6 or 7 last year, make it 2 or 3 this year. That's where you go from 58 catches to close to 65. And so, I see that. But this receiver core, you mentioned all those guys. Will Shepherd is, that guy that could be Xavier as well, right? Omarion Miller's got the ability to be what Xavier did last year, what Jimmy did last year. So, it's such a nice problem to have. If you're Pat Shurmur and you're Shedeur Sanders, you're like, well, who do I throw to? And I love Shedeur. Last year, he talked about all the different guys that he has to throw to. And he goes, I don't ever think about, oh, this is the game I need to get it to Jimmy, or this is the game I need to get it to Omarion. It's just, that's what I'm given. And he would tell his receivers, you might not catch a pass today. That's fine. Next week, you're going to catch 8, and I think that's what we're going to see.
I've been one of those receivers in those situations, and I've been at a receiver and been like, man, why am I playing wide receiver? I'm running more than I'm involved in the game. I should have just been on defense, but that's like the nature of being a wide receiver. You're going to be open sometimes. You're going to think you're open more times than you are. And most of the time the quarterback is throwing based off of either the play call and then the coverage is going to dictate everything. And you might not be in the game plan this week. They might be taking away the seam routes, which is what you're normally running. So got to look away from that. So that's just the nature of being a wide receiver, unfortunately. But it's all about winning. All wide receivers are fine if we can get the win. If I have 0 catches, but we win, okay, I feel like I could have helped, but at least we won. Now if I have 0 catches and we lose, it's going to be a problem. But
well, and we're going to see those games where Omarion's going to have a huge game and then maybe he doesn't do much for 2 weeks, or Will Shepherd's going to have a huge game and doesn't do anything for a couple of weeks. So, but while they're not doing something, Travis is going to have a huge game. Jimmy's going to have huge games. So, I just think this receiving core is so deep that and Shador's going to find that mismatch. And to your point,
Yeah.
if they're taking away what Will does really well one week, well, now Jimmy's open. And so that's what's going to be fun to watch with that receiving core is, that chess match of what do Shermer and Shador figure out each week as to who's going to have that big game.
Yep. Wild cards, real quick. Wild cards at the wide receiver would be Terrell Timmons for me. Terrell Timmons and one other guy slipping my mind right now. Why is it slipping my mind? Terrell Timmons, and I'll take who else you got out there?
I was going to go Cordell Russell, the kid from TCU.
I was just about to say Baby T.O.
Yeah,
Baby T.O. Those would be my wild cards to come in and really make some noise. So look out for those.
That's the fun thing about this core too is that there's probably gonna. You remember like Omarion had his one game last year, right? Tarvash Dawson had his one game, like the Nebraska game.
Yeah.
He kind of exploded. Then that was the only thing he did. Those guys are young. I could see where there's one game like week 7, all of a sudden Cordell Russell has like 10 catches for 140 yards. You're like, well, where's that been? And then he doesn't have much the rest of the year. Or Terrell Timmons, the same type of deal. So, but that's what's the beauty of this receiving core is that you're going to have those guys that can rise up on a particular day if there's injuries or just they get their opportunity. Yeah.
Shouts out to the tight ends. A lot of positions we're going to go over throughout the week. Each and every time we do this, we link up. We'll have some reactions coming for the fans after the practice. Probably a 10, 15-minute video. We'll talk about that. Defensive line, though. I've been liking what I've been seeing on the Well-Off and Reach People and the pregame show videos. Loving Chidozie Nwankwo, Anquin Barnes, Torian Carter, Amari McNeil. Shouts out to J.J. Hawkins getting in there also, and Chaz Wallace. Those guys showing some improvements. I think it's directly correlated to the attitude of the defensive line coaches that they have out there. Warren Sapp and Big D. Lewis, who also played in the league, and the other coaches that are contributing also on the outside rushes, Coach Dancy and such. I think that whole defensive line just have a whole different attitude this year, and I think it's going to be the main focus to be better than last year. That's going to catapult the team for the win because they're going to have to stop the run and keep those running backs from getting long runs up against the linebackers, getting to the secondary, and so on. Defense line is going to be huge, and I like the big guys up the front in the middle to really, really cause some havoc this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned the key word there is attitude, right? And I think a guy like Chidozie brings some of that. And I had a chance I did a Zoom interview with him. I love his personality. I mean, and he's a guy that's played a lot of football, and he's coming in here, knows it's his last go around, and it looked like at their practice on Saturday, he was a non-participant. He wasn't in pads, but he still had helmet and jersey on. So I don't think it's anything serious, but he's a guy that is going to bring some attitude. And Amari had a good year last year. He was kind of quietly had a good year. But I think some of these new guys are going to help a guy like Shane Cokes even, who was a little bit quiet last year. We heard a lot about him leading up to the season. Then he didn't make a ton of plays during the season, but I think Shane's going to look better. Just because there's so much more depth around him as well. So I like that group a lot better. I don't think it's going to be, one of the top defensive lines in the Big 12, but I think it's going to be much better than last year. I mean, last year it was arguably one of the worst in the Pac-12. I don't think they're going to be that. I think that it's going to be a better group. And they don't need to be the best D-line in the Big 12. They just need to be a lot better than last year. And I think that they will be.
A lot better than last year, yep. Let me see here. Before we move on too far, this is what was interesting to me was I was looking at Travis Hunter, who we talked about on offense. I was looking at him on defense, and a lot of shots they had him playing in the slot now. A lot of times if he was off the field, you got Amarion Cooper, you have DJ McKinney, and you got Preston Hodge out there on the field. We're not even mentioning Kamani McLean, who's not been dressed out to play. So that's 5 corners, that I think are starter quality on this defense right now, and high quality guys on this defense. What do you think about seeing Travis in the slot now and trusting DJ McKinney and Preston Hodge to play outside?
Yeah, that's interesting because Travis I think is your best corner, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do there because I like mixing it up a little bit. I still think we're going to wind up seeing Travis mostly on the outside, I would guess. But, DJ McKinney is a really good player. Watching him, he's making some plays in practice. And if like Cooper and McKinney are more comfortable on the outside, Travis you can put anywhere, right? And
exactly.
that's where maybe you'll see that is that if McKinney is pretty solid on the outside, but not in the slot. Well, then, okay, DJ, you be outside. Travis, we know you can cover the slot. And so, that makes you better as a defense. And, you talk about, in basketball, those guys that can play, 1 through 5 or guard 1 through 5. Well, that's Travis, right? you can play him anywhere. If you had to, you could play him at safety. I don't think they're going to do that. But, Travis is that guy. I think he could play any secondary spot. And you'd be better at that spot. And so that's where I like Travis there.
A 5-tool guy in baseball, so to speak.
That's right.
He can do everything.
Travis would probably say he's got 6 or 7 tools.
6 or 7 tools in his belt, 5 is not enough.
That's right.
And then a lot in college football, you see the slot receiver kind of being the focal point too. Being that number one option. So if you put Travis there and you say lock up on him, now it's kind of taking away the option of some of these guys and making them throw to that second or third option that they might not want to go to in the first place. And now you got 2 corner guys out there like Hodge, Kamani McLean, Cooper, and McKinney who can probably make some plays, with Travis taking away that slot guy. So I like it. I like to mix it up like that. Herman Smith III is back there doing some things at safety, wearing that number 6, looking good. I think he can really be an impact player for the team just off the type of player he is. I thought he would come over from Jackson State to Colorado, but he ended up going to Idaho State, was a highly touted player coming out of San Diego Lincoln High School. I think he can add some depth or possibly even start on this defense with Trevor Woods moving down from safety to linebacker now. Cameron Silman Craig there. You got Carter Stockmeyer, I think is going to be playing safety.
Yep.
Looking good at the safety position also.
Shiloh Sanders. Shiloh Sanders, obviously. Yeah, and it's hard to see anybody starting over Cam and Shiloh right now. But, I like Herman there. The guy whose game I love, and I don't think they're going to be able to keep him off the field, is Jaden Milliner-Jones.
Jaden Milliner-Jones.
Yeah. I mean, when he came in last year, it was like, ooh, okay. This freshman can play, and he's a Dallas area guy. I think it's Dallas. I know he's from Texas. So I apologize
Texas, baby.
Yeah, if it's Houston, I apologize. I can't remember exactly where he's from, but he's a Texas guy.
I think it's DeSoto, Texas.
That's
DeSoto.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So I knew it was Dallas, but yeah, he's a guy you're not going to be able to keep him off the field, and I do think that Shiloh and Cam, if they're healthy, are starting. But Jaden, to me, is one of those young guys, and this team. This is a different topic a little bit, but this team has received so much attention nationally for the transfer portal, right, and all the transfers they brought in. But that freshman class from 2023, you look at that, Dylan Edwards, Cormani McLean, Jaden Milliner-Jones, Omarion Miller. How many guys are we talking about right now from that freshman class out of high school? Isn't the narrative that Dion can't, coach can't recruit out of high school? Look at that freshman class from last year, and the knock on Coach Prime is that he can't recruit out of high school. Well, that group's pretty good from last year.
Exactly. And you include Taj McCoy also, who's been making some plays in spring. He's coming out of there. So, yeah, man, they did a great job. And then the ones that they have coming in this year, too, are no slouch.
Micah Welch.
Brandon Davis Swain on the defensive line making plays. So, I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. I'm loving the talent that they have accumulated
and found, with the recruiting coordinators, Coach Devin Respris and Coach Corey Phillips and staff. Shouts out to them doing a great job since they've been there and surrounding Coach Prime with good players and good player options. Last but not least, the coaching staff he's put together has been one that he's looked at as being, he wanted to bring that NFL environment. I think he's done just that. Big field load hold on the offensive line. line, veteran.
Yep.
Defensive line, Coach Sapp, veteran. Deion Lewis, veteran. Adelius Thomas, I don't know his official role, but he's around the team, veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Who else am I missing? Might be Jason Phillips,
Jason
college
Phillips,
great
yep.
coming in, veteran. So, just great guys he's surrounded himself with on the staff that's bringing that NFL highly competitive attitude and atmosphere at practice.
Yeah, it's a staff that is loaded with NFL guys, and then you add in just an addition from last week, George Hageman, who played offensive line in the NFL.
How did I forget Big George?
That's right. Who is a very large man. I'm a big guy, and I love George Hageman because he made me look small. He's a big guy. So, and I do want, you mentioned one guy real quick. I want to mention Taj McCoy at Xavier's Pro Day the other day. We don't get to watch practice, but we got to watch Pro Day. Standing there chatting with a veteran edge player. I won't say who it was, but he was telling me. He said Taj McCoy. He goes, "That's a player," and this is a guy that wants to start here. He's like, we're not going to be able to get him off the field. He was saying Taj McCoy is really good and having a great spring. So, watch for that guy as well.
Yeah, even Coach Dink Williams last year, you could see some of the comments he was making during the practices. You could tell that he was like, I see something in this kid right here.
Yep.
And Taj McCoy. So I'm loving it, and I'm excited to see what he's going to bring. But yeah, all in all, man, on this BuffTime conversation, BuffTime podcast, Brian Howell, BiggDoggChico, we will be talking about everything and all things Buff. We got special things to talk about maybe tomorrow or whenever else we get back on here. But a lot of players to talk about, a lot of news, and more things and everything, Coach Prime, keep coming. So let them know where they can find you at, Brian, and any last closing words?
Yeah, and we also got offensive line to talk about at some point too. That big group. Yeah, but BuffZone.com is where my coverage is, and Twitter at Brian Howell 33.
BuffZone.com, baby, y'all log in right now. Subscribe to his YouTube channel also, that's constantly growing. Log on to mine also. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And more BuffTime podcasts coming. Hopefully we can get it on Spotify and Apple and all this other stuff, so y'all can continue to hear our voices, all right, and giving our knowledge from Coach Prime side to the Buff side, and we combining them, bringing them together, baby. All right, it's all about Go Buff business up in here.